So moving on now to Session 7 and the National Dialogue on Climate Change. So up on the screen there's an extract again from the Programme for Partnership Government from May 2016, which you can obviously read, but a few phrases that's worth highlighting in it. The phrase, much better engagement with citizens and communities about energy policy decisions that affect them. Citizens and communities are active participants in the energy transition. Robust public and stakeholder engagement. So there's a clear commitment there to really engage with citizens on decisions that are going to affect them. And ultimately, there's nothing going to affect the long-term welfare of Ireland and the planet than how we handle climate change. And there's a commitment to establish a national dialogue on climate change that will involve extensive public consultation. So the dialogue will have a number of objectives, and I suppose they're interlinked building blocks. The first would be to create an awareness of the challenge that climate change presents. Then, having created the awareness, to get engagement, that wide society becomes engaged with that challenge, and then motivated to act locally, regionally, and nationally. And when people become aware and engaged and motivated to act, we need to create structures to facilitate them so that they can gather, discuss, deliberate, maximise consensus, very much akin to what you've been engaged in as part of the Citizens' Assembly over the last number of months. A key piece of that as well will be to provide the necessary information to people to facilitate them, so information flows will be very important. Once we've done that, we want to establish on a long-term basis appropriate networks, because this is something that we're not going to deal with in a year or 2 years. We're going to be dealing with climate change out over the next number of decades, and we're going to be needing to bring forward new policies and new actions over a number of decades. And then to provide regular input through the dialogue into how we prioritise investment decisions and input into government policy making, that when the dialogue, National Dialogue on Climate Action, meets over a year, a report can be produced and the ideas coming forward can feed into policy making that government is engaged in. So it was established by the Minister in July 2017. This is the advisory group to it, and their purpose is really, and we're coming to questions a little later in this about what questions we'd like you to address here today, but their role is really to advise on how we should go about the dialogue. How can we most effectively engage with citizens? How can we get to hear what they want to say? How can we start to translate that into tangible actions? And there are 16 members on this advisory group from diverse perspectives. We have some sectoral representation, NGO representation, and civil society all represented. And I've sat in on their first 2 meetings, and there are lots of very, very creative ideas coming from the group, and hopefully we'll get some from the session today as well. In terms of programmes already in place, we've started a Green Schools National Climate Change Action and Awareness Programme. So it'll incorporate initiatives such as a Green Schools Climate Action Week, a Climate Action Expo, which I think will be next February 2018, and a Climate Ambassador Programme. It's being trialled in 100 schools, but the hope would be to expand that over time, a bit like the Green Flags initiative. It's being delivered by the department in partnership with Tashka's Environmental Education Unit. The next, I suppose, big initiative under the dialogue, and it's something we're planning at the moment, is a series of regional events. And we're looking at 4 regions in the country, the greater Dublin area and its surrounds being one, and then 3 other regions. And initially, these regional gatherings will attempt to raise awareness, to present on the scientific evidence base for climate change, to make people aware of the global and national responses, and we saw some of that in the earlier presentation, and then to shift it from the regional to the local is what we'd like to do. We want to engage local communities. And the idea to start with would be, in each of the regions we've selected, to then go and have 3 local initiatives within those regions where we try innovative consultation techniques like citizens' juries or people talk. And on the advisory group, we have people with great expertise in these techniques, and that they deliberate at this local level over a period. It feeds back up then within an annual cycle to the regional, to the national, and then the opportunity to input that into policy making going forward. I've alluded to the local community conversations and actions. Other events, obviously the continued implementation of the programme in schools, and hopefully the wider rolling out of that. I mentioned information being very important earlier, and providing information to people so that they can deliberate. We're proposing to have professionally moderated expert debates and lectures on key policy issues that we stream live and that we can have podcasts on, so that when local communities come to deliberate, they'll have access to these, and in advance of discussing a topic, they'll be able to watch and learn and pick up information. And also ongoing engagement with the political system under the dialogue. So finally now, coming to the questions for the Assembly, and there's 5 of them. First one is, why do you think people switch off when they hear about climate change? Or maybe you don't think they switch off, but if you do think they switch off, why do you think they switch off? Second one, what are the challenges facing communities and individuals in taking action against climate change? I think, personally, sometimes the scale of the challenge can be overwhelming. And do local communities and individuals have a sense that I can do something, a sense of being empowered to do something? And your ideas around the challenge facing them in taking action and feeling empowered. Next one's around communication. How can individuals and communities best communicate their concerns about climate change? Communicate them to government. Views on that would be very much appreciated. And then, how should the government engage with people? And particularly interested in this, I mean, I've mentioned the idea that we do regional meetings and then move to local, but we want to know what would work for local communities. Town hall meetings, social media, TV, radio, advertising, programs, education, should be schools, universities. Just how should we, what are your ideas about how we should communicate and engage people on the issue? And finally, addressing climate change will need action by everyone. So what role do you see for public authorities, the private sector, civil society, and individuals? And these are very important questions. And ultimately, this is about each one of us as an individual changing our behaviour. So to get your perspective on those today would be extremely helpful to us. And thanks for putting up with me for 2 sessions. Thanks.